This is part 2 of the Creating Melted Chocolate lesson, and we'll be continuing from the last video where we have our 3D enabled solid containing our radio wave pattern. So inside of the radio waves composition, let's come in here and toggle closed all of the properties. Next, let's come back to the chocolate composition. So now we're looking at the chocolate composition here in the composition panel, and this particular composition is still empty. So now what we're going to do is come over to the project panel. Let's select our waves composition and let's drag and drop it inside of the chocolate composition. And so now we have our waves composition nested inside of the chocolate composition. Now to see our artwork, let's come down to the timeline panel. Let's drag the timeline panel out to 4 seconds. And what's happening here is not only are we seeing the 4-second mark of the chocolate composition, we're also seeing the 4-second mark of the waves composition that's nested inside of this chocolate composition. So once we can see this, let's come up here to the effects and presets. Let's clear our search for the Gaussian blur, and let's come in here and search for CC Glass. So I'll just type in the word glass. Under stylize, we'll see CC Glass. And so let's click and drag this and apply this to the waves composition. And so we talked pretty extensively about this particular plugin in the Creating a Water Surface lesson. So what we're going to do here is go in and set some specific properties so that we can get the effect for the chocolate. So in the effect controls, I'm going to toggle open the surface property here. And let's come in here and start by setting the softness. I'm going to bring the softness up to 27. For the height, let's come in here and increase this. I'm going to increase this up to about 72. And you can see the effects showing up immediately here in the composition panel. And then finally for the displacement, let's bring this down to about 80. I'll just click and drag and change that. And now to make the light a little bit stronger and to reduce some of the inner shadows, let's come down to the shading properties and let's increase the ambient property up to 200. And so now with these properties set, let's create a new solid so we can apply a 4-color gradient. So let's come up to the layer menu, come down to new, choose solid. Let's name this gradient. We'll make it comp size. Let's choose OK. Then back to the effects and presets. Let's come in here and remove our search for glass. I'll type in the word gradient. And what we're looking for here is the 4-color gradient under the generate group. Let's apply this to our solid. And that's going to give us a 4-color gradient where each color in the gradient is specified by these individual targets. So if I click these targets and move them around, they actually change the way the color blends into the other targets on this gradient effect. So the first thing we'll do is come over to our effect controls. And for color number 1, let's come in here and click on the yellow swatch. And let's change this to a dark brown color. So we're going to put 34 for red, 16 for green, and 04 for blue. Let's click OK. Next, let's go over to color 2. Click on the green swatch. And we're going to change this to a lighter brown color. So we'll use 87 for red, 52 for green, and 20 for blue. Let's click OK. Next, let's come over here and change color 3. We're going to set this to 67 for red, 3F for green, and 22 for blue. Click OK. And then finally for color 4, let's come in here and set this to 30 for red, 14 for green, and 04 for blue. Then click OK. Next, let's go down to the timeline panel and change the blending mode. Now, if you don't see the mode column here, if you're on a Creative Cloud version of After Effects, you'll have this little mode icon over here that you can click on and off to turn on and off the modes. Or you can come over here and right click in the title layer here, come down to columns and make sure that modes is checked. Once you do that, you'll be able to change the blending mode. So for the gradient solid, let's come in here and change this to vivid light. So select this item here. And then once we do that, we'll now see that that color gradient is now being applied to that texture that we created inside of the waves composition. And so once your color is applied, you can come back to the effect controls and start moving around those color points. You can also come down to the timeline panel, select the waves composition, and come back to the CC Glass properties and come in here and change the different properties here as well. So if I increase the softness, for example, this will make the individual waves blend in together a little nicer. And then if we lower this, this will create harder edged waves. We can also come in here and adjust the height and the displacement. So you can play with all of these different settings to get the exact texture that you want for your chocolate. And we used this technique to create a chocolate texture for an advertisement. We then composited that texture with a photo, made some color adjustments so that the texture matched the color of the chocolates in the photo, and then we set the text to complete the advertisement.